Every ending, so the saying goes, begins quietly. I started my day with a cup of lukewarm coffee and the aroma of lemon-scented furniture polish, the type used in offices to cover up the smell of stale ambition and stress. I was seated in conference room 3B of Helix Core Technologies, which I essentially helped start from the beginning. Its infrastructure took 10 years of my life, sleepless evenings spent writing code-budgeted patches for systems, and meeting proposed features that were rejected until someone louder reiterated them. And now I was being kicked out as well. Darren Cole was the name of the man seated across from me. White teeth, a sharp suit, and hair that hadn't moved since dawn. New vision, new CEO. The same script. He said, "Marin, this isn't personal," as if he had spent the entire morning rehearsing the phrase in front of the mirror. All we're doing is creating space for new energy. You've been amazing. However, it's time for fresh voices and leadership. I put down the spoon after giving my coffee one stir. Of course, I answered in a calm, nearly bored voice. I appreciate the notice. He grinned. I meant it. He thought that I was competent cooperative, perhaps even appreciative. But I was ice on the inside. I'm not yet angry, not even shocked. Simply put, cold. I straightened my navy blazer and got to my feet. My hands remained steady. My heart wasn't pounding. I knew something that Darren didn't not, because it didn't matter. The mechanism on which he was going to stake Helix Core's future. The client-side encryption tree. The dashboards that may be customized, or the core of the analytics engine. They didn't own it. I owned it. And it had always been legally. Years ago, the patent was filed in my name, silently unbreakable. Back when Helix Core was still based out of a co-working room with fluctuating lights, I had fought for it. The board had concurred, signed, filed, I forgot. Until the firewall turns into a wall of flames. They never remember the woman behind it. Without saying another word, I walked out of that conference room. Like a period at the end of a sentence, I didn't have to finish. The door clicked behind me. The corridor was longer than I had recalled. I walked by lines of desks occupied by people who averted their gazes from me. I thought they were co-workers, some of whom had once been buddies. I was not stopped. Nobody spoke. I've discovered that loyalty is frequently a whisper loud when you're soaring and hushed when you're falling. I started packing once I was back at my work, or what was once my desk, methodically. The little cactus is called Finn, a broken coffee mug from an unremembered retreat, a picture of me trekking in Montana with my brother, and my old leather-bound notebook wrapped in a scarf in the very bottom of the drawer. When funds were too limited for a whiteboard, I drew system concepts in this one. The one with coffee stains I could never explain, and post-its glued between pages. I carefully put it in my bag, closed it with a zipper, and gave it one last glance. After that, I left. I did not shed a tear that night. Sitting at my kitchen counter sipping peppermint tea, I gazed at my laptop's flickering cursor. Not melancholy, not even anger. Only a hollow, slow ache. The kind that results from being deleted from anything you have created. However, something settled inside of me as the drink cooled. Not retaliation, not resentment, clarity. They were cutting fat. Helix Core believed they were unaware that they had recently had their spine severed because the licensing for their multi-million-dollar platform's key infrastructure, the technology that drove it, was up for renewal every 3 months, every 3 months. My circumstances, my key. Additionally, that key was scheduled to expire at midnight on Friday. Don't hack. No sabotage. Simply put, expiry. I had 2 choices. Quietly renew the license and take my pride with me. Allow it to lapse. As intended, see the system switch back to restricted mode. Locked, stalled, immobilized. I took a drink of my tea. The taste of option 2 was superior. It's still legal. Still no word, but enduring 9:00 a.m. on Tuesday. As I had done for the past decade, I strolled back into the building not to engage in combat, just to watch my exit, had not yet been processed by HR. It requires time. I was officially still on the books. Up until that point, I was not stopped. Obviously not. A young woman was seated at my desk, or rather my old desk, when I arrived. She appeared to have just graduated from college. Nervous eyes typing a bit too quickly for comfort. When she saw me, she leaped to her feet. Oh, her cheeks flushed as she muttered, "I didn't know you'd be in." I grinned. It wasn't her fault. I said calmly, "I'm just here to help with the transition." She was hired to take my place, but she was unaware of the whole situation. Her name was Rachel. I guided her through the dashboard interface. After pulling up a chair next to her, she posed insightful queries. She was intelligent. However, I could already see the cracks starting to appear. It was a complicated system since it was necessary. We worked with global financial information. Shortcuts were not an option. By midday, she was having trouble recalling the relational schema. She whispered, "They told me this would be easy. They always do." I said quietly in response, I didn't treat her cruelly. The issue wasn't Rachel. Those who believed that experience could be downloaded like a plugin used her as simply another pawn in their game. I sat at the cafe across the street at 12:30 p.m. On bad days, I would retreat to the same table. I have my laptop open. I retrieved the patent paperwork, which was securely stored in the cloud and encrypted each and every clause, each timestamp, each and every signature. Air close. Unless otherwise contractually transferred, all derivative works, modules, extensions, and frameworks remain under the exclusive ownership of the original architect. There was no transfer. They never imagined that they would require one. I started writing the official revocation notice in a new tab to Legal Plus Executive Helix Core Technologies from Blake Marin software license termination, effective at 11:59 p.m. on Friday EST. It wasn't sent by me, not quite yet. Time was of the essence. Maximum quiet, maximum mass. I shut down the laptop and glanced out the window in time to see Darren Cole on the building stairs, chuckling into his phone and projecting that arrogant self-confidence as if his mere presence had already improved the company. He didn't know. He had no notion that by Friday he would be facing a system that he didn't comprehend and that no longer followed rules. Wednesday had the feeling more substantial. Although there was still order in the office, there was a change in the atmosphere. People's voices were low. Back-to-back conference rooms were reserved. Anthony, the senior systems specialist, was walking close to the server stack and muttering into his headset when I passed him. He gave me the, "I know something's wrong, but I don't know what it is yet" expression. I gave a nod, in silence calmly. I checked in as normal at my makeshift station, a desk someone had assembled for transitional support, not to assist, not for sabotage, only to observe. Already the first logs were blinking red. Lag in authentication. Timeout for dashboard refresh. Token inconsistency. Not failure. Not quite yet. However, it was beginning to cough, much like an engine that is running low on oil. Rachel discovered me with a pale face before lunch. She showed me a sticky pad with ID numbers and said, 3 clients are unable to access their analytics portals. I did as instructed. I checked everything 3 times. I carefully took the note. I said, "You did it right." "It's not you." I opened the back-end diagnostic tool while bending over. There was a silent message hidden in the system logs. There are 48 hours left in the evaluation mode. Expect limited access or renew your license. Rachel gazed at the display. What is meant by that? I gave her a look. It indicates that they are using borrowed time. All employees were summoned to a company-wide meeting at 2 Romanas in the glass conference room. Anticipation is in the air. As if he were the star of a TED Talk, Darren Cole stood at the front. The same outfit, the same phony assurance. He smiled and said, "I just wanted to say how proud I am of the team. Change is always difficult. However, we're simplifying. We're coming up with new ideas. We're making progress." I kept a careful eye on him. He worked on his posture. His smile was a bit too flawless. However, his gaze flitted. Only once. "Are there any queries before we wind up?" Anthony held out his hand. He cleared his throat and said, "Yeah, actually. A few of our clients are complaining about difficulties accessing the dashboard, timeouts, and minor outages. Although it has been difficult to track down, we are looking into it." Darren remained unblinking. He grinned and remarked, "Growing pains. It will level out. We have things under control." He didn't know after that. Nobody said anything. There was an uneasy shuffle at the end of the meeting. Anthony mumbled as I went by him, close to the exit, "It is becoming more severe." I gave a nod. I understand. I opened my terminal once more at my workstation this time, to watch rather than to repair or patch. My instructions were being precisely followed by the system. This was not anarchy. It was a choreography. Every analytics crash, dashboard, malfunction, and authorization problem was but the next beat in an unstoppable silent countdown. Darren Cole was dancing without seeing. I walked past Darren in the foyer that evening. As I was leaving the building, his hand was going over his gelled hair while he was on the phone, his face tight. He glanced at me and nodded curtly. I gave it back, with an expressionless face. He hadn't made the connection. Not quite yet. I opened my laptop, lit a lamp, and went over the revocation letter once more at home. I didn't alter anything, like a loaded chamber. The email remained in my drafts folder. Subject: license, termination, effective, midnight Friday, attachment system, logs, timestamps, and patent references. I sipped my drink and shut down the laptop. Another day, Thursday, the quiet before the fall. As soon as I entered Helix Core, I could feel the pressure. The sort of quiet that precedes a storm. It was abnormally quiet at the desks. Error warnings flashed on screens. Like floodwater surging past the first floor support tickets, flooded into the help desk queue. I said nothing at all, I just signed in. Noted, the system logs now show. Notice, the license status is about to expire in 14 hours. Note, while awaiting renewal, core modules are prohibited. Error, invalid authentication server token. No one had yet approached me. Not Darren illegal, not the board. I pictured them in suits sweating behind closed doors, searching for terms like emergency software licensing crisis. On Google, Rachel approached me once more. She was on the verge of tears this time. She said, "It's happening everywhere. The dashboards, the internal instruments, customers are becoming enraged. I believe that Darren is living in denial." I gave a nod. She gave me a perplexed expression. "Why do you not feel panicked?" I reached into my backpack, took out the leather-bound notepad, and set it down on the desk. Because I anticipated this, I replied, "Years ago." She examined the scratched cover. "What is that?" My policy escalation started at 12:00. A Boston-based financial firm that was one of our top clients lost complete access to their dashboard of quarterly KPIs. Their COO sent Darren a direct email with their legal department, and 3 board members copied. I knew as soon as Darren read it without having to be in the room. From the other side of the room, I heard the door bang. After 5 minutes, he came charging at me. "Where is Marin?" He let out a bark. Calmly and slowly, I got up. "This very spot." Red-faced and with a tight voice, he approached me directly. "Have you noticed these problems? Why didn't you alert me about this situation?" "Stable?" I cocked my head. "Anthony brought it up during the all-hands. For days people have been whispering." He blinked the blink that indicates you're right, but he'll never acknowledge it. "Is that something you can fix?" His voice strained for control. As he asked, I stopped. I wanted the stillness to fall, not because I was at a loss for words. Allow him to sense it. "It depends." I said. "On what?" I gave him a direct look. "On whether you still believe that I can be replaced." He tightened his jaw, opened, closed. Nothing to say, I took a seat again. "Be calm," measured. "I'll be here until 5 o'clock. Friday, P. I said, "I have no further obligations to this company after that." There was silence in the room. A member of the marketing team swiveled around in their seat to observe others averted their gaze. But everyone was aware that the balance had changed. I didn't stay up late that night. Didn't go over the logs again. Didn't make any changes. It was 5:30 p.m. when I left. Sharp. Beyond Darren's office, he sat glumly at his desk, gazing at an uncontrollable system. Not a wave, no farewell. Nothing but quiet. I opened my laptop at home. The email was prepared, no changes. Don't be theatrical, simply said the truth. Click, I sent it. To law enforcement, to executives, to Darren, to the board. The subject line's simplicity was brutal. License termination effective. 11:59 p.m. Friday. I shut down the laptop, poured wine into a glass, watched a silent sunset cause the skyline to blink. It was finished. Not a shout, not a post for retaliation, just business. Friday at 6 in the morning. The alarm wasn't necessary for me. Sitting at my window with a mug of dark roast coffee, I had been up since 5 and had been watching the city come to life under a chilly grey sky. It appeared to be just another morning. However, I was aware Helix Core would enter a different Helix Core today, one that had lost its roots and been shattered by its own conceit. I checked my email overnight. The responses had already begun to come in. Urgent licensing validation failed. A youth error. Cannot renew system token. Internal legal needs confirmation of IP status. It's too late. It was precisely 11:59 p.m. Just as intended, the licensing engine entered restricted evaluation mode the previous evening. The dashboards, the databases, the predictive AI engine authentication trees and reporting modules. Everything was enclosed in a framework that needed to be signed, my signature. They also lacked it. 7:32 a.m. system. Warning offline core modules. Authentication server being unresponsive. Invalid license for analytics engine. Access denied to the client. I didn't get involved. Not a single line of code was altered. I simply observed red flags appeared in real time on my private monitoring panel, which is a safe, read-only diagnostic window. In the beginning, I had constructed it as a backup tool. It was now a front row seat to a catastrophe they vowed never to experience. It buzzed on my phone. Rachel, I allowed it to ring twice. I picked up the phone on the third. Marin, it is taking place. She spoke in a panic. Dashboards, internal tools, and client logins are all malfunctioning. Anthony is going crazy. Additionally, Darren is in a panic. I took a drink of my coffee. Have you looked over the logs? I inquired gently. Indeed. The license is deemed invalid, but how can that be? I don't comprehend. I revoked it. I muttered. Quiet. You what? I took the license away last evening lawfully, according to the patent contract. She remained silent for a few seconds. Then, what kept you from telling anyone? I did, I calmly answered. Just not lately. Many years ago, when it was still important. More quiet. Then a murmur barely heard. Darren is going to go crazy. He seems to have done so already. I hung up 9:12 a.m. Errors did not spread as quickly as news did, quicker than a panic. System-wide failure hits Helix core. Clients unable to access critical data. Company in chaos after license dispute. My phone came back to life around 9:30. Blocked phone number, I didn't have to speculate. I replied. Marin Darren spoke in a weak voice. Broken. He spoke quickly. We are in a predicament. I just said, I know the program your program. Everything has gone down. Customers are shut out. Dashboards within the company are not working properly. 5 minutes apart, the board calls. How on earth did you accomplish that? I sat back in my chair and closed my eyes. Darren, I didn't do anything. I simply quit taking care of things for you. A pause of startled silence. You can't be serious, he murmured, gasping for air. We made an agreement. You were expected to remain for the changeover. You broke that agreement. I answered. On the first day of your stay, his tone grew softer. Desperation began to seep in. Marin, let's discuss. I can make this right. Simply specify your price. And there it was, the inescapable appeal. It nearly made me chuckle. Not in a mean way, but rather with the kind of arid comprehension that results from learning a lesson far too late. Money was never a factor in this, I stated. What is it about then? He yelled. I waited for the silence to respond. Next. You dismissed the one employee keeping your business afloat. You're starting to understand what that implies. His respiration was audible to me. Quicker now. Please, he said in a whisper. I murmured quietly. Darren, I'm not coming back. I've moved on already. Perhaps you ought to too. I hung up. Helix Core was trending by lunchtime, but not for the right reasons. Helix crash. Shutdown of software. Licensing error investors. Ran away. Lawsuits were threatened by clients. On LinkedIn, former workers shared barely veiled, told you so anecdotes. And I just drank tea and didn't respond to anyone. Interviews were not granted by me. Did not send a tweet, skip the dancing in the ashes. By themselves, they were blazing perfectly. 4:17 p.m. on Friday. A final voicemail. Again. Darren, Marin, please. The board wants answers that I am unable to provide. Legal claims that until you sign a reinstatement, we are doomed. I made a mistake. I made no inquiries. What you built was not respected by me. I believed it to be simply code. However, it wasn't. Please simply give me a call back. Near the end, he cracked his voice. The sound was no longer that of a man in command. It came from a man who had finally realized how much disregarding the foundation would cost. I didn't return his call, as this was no longer his story. I owned it. 5 p.m. sharp, I walked out onto the balcony of my flat. The city skyline was covered in long gold shadows as the sun started to set. The word Helix Core was still flashing on a downtown skyscraper beneath me, but it was now both literally and figuratively dimmer. They had an error notice and a blank page on their website. They had jammed their lines of assistance. They had a jumbled executive team. And me, I had freedom. I didn't feel joy. I wasn't happy. There was more to it. Heavier liberty. They had attempted my erasure, take my spot. Act as though I were a footnote. However, I had not vanished. I had just taken myself out of their narrative in order for me to write my own Saturday morning. No news was checked by me, not because I didn't want to know. However, I no longer needed it. Using tech jargon and shareholder spin. Helix Core had become yesterday's headline, a warning story. They would attribute it to the change. They might even point the finger at me, blaming it on technical issues. Permit them. Now it didn't matter what they lost. I was going to construct it. I took the leather-bound notebook off my shelf and set it on the kitchen table that afternoon. The slight scent of cedar and ink was still there. I looked past outdated designs, including the analytics engine's initial architecture sketch, a post-it note that read, "Don't trust buzzwords," and a coffee stain that encircled the words, "Code is replicable." Vision cannot what-ifs page after page. Notes I never tried because I didn't have the money. Concepts too audacious for committee sessions. There was no committee anymore. Only me. A blank page, too. 10:00 a.m. on Monday. Floor 17 of the downtown venture hub Iris Monroe, whose name I hadn't spoken out loud in years, was the person I encountered. She founded Glasslight Partners, a lean venture capital firm that supports underdog talent. 5 years prior, we had met at a tech symposium. She could recall my name when no one else did. Iris welcomed me as if we were old friends. She grinned and held out her hand, saying, "Marin Blake." Word spreads quickly. Helix Core exploded. I returned the smile. Well, I've heard. We wasted no time. No idle chatter. Don't pretend. She ushered me into a brightly lit office with glass walls and pointed to the chair across from her. All right, what are you hoping to construct? I moved the notepad across the desk after opening it. This isn't another suit-run platform. It's not a dashboard created by non-technical individuals. I want to construct a space where those who produce things also own them. Iris didn't flinch. She gave one nod. Continue. I described it as a modular system based on transparency. No black box reasoning. No gatekeeping. Simple adaptable architecture. Engineers built it for actual people, and a portion of it belongs to each and every contributor possession. Not just lip service, genuine equity. With her hands clasped, she reclined in her chair. And what are you in need of? I inhaled. A tiny group independence and sufficient funds to endure without seeking fictitious expansion. I stopped. I'd rather not have another Helix Core. My goal is to create what Helix Core might have been. Iris softly closed, the journal grinned, finished after 3 months, above a bookshop in a 2-room loft. Hatchmark Systems was founded. Not a glass tower. No lobby made of marble. Just decent coffee whiteboards and people who cared. Rachel deserved better than to be a scapegoat. So I hired her. Anthony quit Helix Core 2 weeks after I brought him aboard. I asked for help, went through previous LinkedIn posts, and discovered others who were similar to me. The undervalued, the quiet, the nearly forgotten. Our very first item, a streamlined set of analytics tools for small companies. No nonsense, no technical terms, just some clarity. We had more incoming interest than we could handle by the time we released our beta. Not due to ostentatious advertising, but because honesty is like a lighthouse in a world full of trickery. After a year, I was on a platform at a Portland gathering for small tech founders. Not much, only a few of 100 people. However, it was our very first keynote address. I didn't intend to talk. However, Iris pushed me onto the stage, and for some reason I wasn't anxious. I turned to face the throng, programmers, designers, builders, those who had had enough of being disregarded. And I added, a broken promise isn't the most dangerous lie in technology. It's the idea that stillness denotes weakness and that allegiance is interchangeable. However, those who construct the walls are also skilled at tearing them down. More significantly, they understand how to begin anew. There was no echo in the applause it touched down. Additionally, I didn't feel like I was proving anything for the first time in years. I had the impression that I was urging people to adopt a new worldview. The notepad, I continue to use it. It serves as a reminder not because I need it. Each time I open its battered cover, I am reminded of those late hours at Helix Core when I sat by myself at 2:00 a.m. troubleshooting a failing server. I recall the time I presented a plan only to have management rebrand it, add a logo, and claim credit. I recall being fired because someone had forgotten my value, not because I had failed. And now, in the margins, I now write new things. First, let junior engineers speak. Create systems that are more durable than titles. A design principle is respect, a single evening. When Rachel interrupted me, I was shutting up the office. Do you know what I discovered? As she flipped over her own project notes, she said, "What is that?" Being invisible is not a fear for anyone here. I stopped, examined her, grinned. Well, Arnie replied, I meant it too. Wednesday afternoon, peaceful. With sunshine streaming in through the windows and creating long rectangles on our reclaimed wood floor, the workplace was peaceful. While debugging a new module, Rachel was humming an odd tune. As animated as ever, Anthony was arguing with two interns over API design. I was reviewing our guidebook again while enjoying a cup of coffee in my corner. Everything seemed to be steady, not flawless, but authentic. Ours. My phone then buzzed. An unknown number. Voicemail. After a moment of staring at the screen, I hit play. Marin, it's Darren. Before I completely leave this industry, I wanted to say something, even though I know you don't want to hear from me. 3 weeks ago, I left Helix Core. The harm was too great. Customers withdrew. We were exhausted by legal settlements. I've had plenty of time to reflect. I also recognized that for the majority of my career, I had mistaken speed for knowledge and control for leadership. I only ever saw those who sold things. I never really saw those who built them. I was not destroyed by what you did. I had to check myself in the mirror. I apologize, not only for dismissing you. For each time I sat in a room and disregarded a more knowledgeable person, I hope you're creating a better project. And I hope you won't hate me when you look back on me. That's all. Farewell. I gave the message. 2 listens. Then again, I didn't have to. However, I wanted to ensure that I heard everything. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Without a return address, some things are destined to end. Instead, I penned a sentence in my leather-bound notebook, the final pages of which were now loose from the spine. Reopening the wound does not promote healing. Walking far enough that the scar serves as a reminder, rather than a prison, is how we recover. I shut the lid and got up. Unaware and indifferent, the city moved outside the window. It didn't feel like I was watching from the sidelines, though. For the first time, it was like mine. After 3 months, we introduced our platform's 2.0 edition, tidy, transparent, subtly revolutionary. We were dubbed the anti-startup startup by tech media. Hypergrowth wasn't what we were after. Integrity was what we sought. One publication wrote, disruption was not the foundation of hitherto systems. It was founded on keeping in mind who constructs the things we have faith in, and that any valuation didn't feel as good as that. The notebook last entry, the night before our first anniversary, I composed it. Like the morning Helix Core fell, I'm sitting by my window once more. They attempted to have me buried. However, I wasn't a seed. The architect was I, and I created the blueprint myself this time. I used my entire name when I signed it. No title, no humility, just the facts. Outro, just another morning. Early that day, I walked to work. My order had been committed to memory by the barista across the street. On the door was my name, not the letterhead alone. I opened the front door, went inside, and stood for a while, not to gawk nor to boast, just to catch my breath. The glass tower's reverberation was no longer present. It had a lived-in feel. It seemed sincere. It was like mine. Additionally, that was retaliation. Not when they fell apart, but in my development. Not in what I retracted. In what I no longer required from them, however.